Effective governance, ethical leadership, discipline, innovation, and entrepreneurship. These are the factors that will be crucial in allowing developing countries to move forward, according to Lee Kuan Yew, founding father of modern Singapore and its prime minister from 1959 to 1990. Lee transformed the poor city-state into an economic juggernaut. His wisdom is often sought after in global politics. Joining our discussion today is a renowned political scientist Graham Allison, the founding dean of the modern Harvard Kennedy School. He recently co-wrote Lee Kuan Yew's Grand Master's Insights on China, the United States, and the World, which is based on his interviews with Lee, as well as his speeches and other interviews he's done over the years. So Lee Kuan Yew regards the ethical leadership as a key differentiator for developing countries, and he is quoted as saying a clean, efficient, and predictable government is actually a competitive advantage for a country. And what do you think about that idea?
Well, I think if you look at the track record of Singapore and compare it with the track record of many other developing countries, he compares it with African countries or with the Philippines or with other countries in the region, his recipe is a pretty good recipe.
And also he plays discipline over democracy. And between the two, personally, which one do you think is more important for developing countries to move forward?
Well, that's a very good question. So I think in terms of the record, even though I'm very strongly in favor of democracy as a philosophy, and I come from a very American tradition, that if you have a competent and benevolent leadership, discipline beats democracy for development. And I would say you can see an example of this in Africa today in Rwanda, where Kagame is criticized for being forcing more discipline, but Rwanda is improving significantly. So if I had to choose between discipline, if it's competent and benevolent, and democracy, that's easy. Now, between discipline that's corrupt and predatory versus democracy, then democracy better because it's, but I think that Lee Kuan Yew represents, and China itself represent challenges to the orthodoxy in the West, which says democracy is the best recipe for development.
So the key is still this ethical leadership, as he said, that to keep the government clean and efficient.
Right, and that's quite hard to do. Now, he has this theory, which is almost like Plato's theory, of a governing class, an elite who have as you say, a high ethic, who have an enlightened sense of the interests of the country, and who are prepared to sacrifice and think about what's good for the country. And how do you create such a leadership cadre, and how do you sustain such a leadership cadre? That's a big challenge.
And also, he said that if China were to take liberal democracy, the country would collapse. Do you agree with that?
Well, again, I think whether if it were to go quickly to a liberal democracy, it would collapse. I don't know, but I think his argument that it's pretty clear that the current Chinese leadership is not about to try such an experiment is certainly correct. And if you listen to what Xi Jinping has said about the collapse of the Soviet Union, his analysis of what Gorbachev got wrong makes it clear that he pretty much agrees with Lee Kuan Yew.
And also, Lee Kuan Yew prioritizes innovation and entrepreneurship over technological capability for a country. And do you agree with that?
Well, that's interesting. Very good question. So he's been very interested in what kind of changes will have to happen in culture, even in culture in Singapore, in order to have a society that's creative, inventive, and innovative, in order to fuel the technological revolutions that he thinks are transforming the world all around us. So I think there's a big idea there, and the idea that somebody who, once they become 70 or 80 years old, is still looking, carefully watching what's happening and how this may even require significant changes in a culture that he's helped shape in Singapore, very, very instructive.
Li puts Xi Jinping in Nelson Mandela's class of persons. And do you agree with that?
I think the fact that Lee Kuan Yew, who's known so many Chinese leaders, regards him so highly is very interesting. But if you look at Lee Kuan Yew, the people whom he admires people that faced huge adversity and who overcame it by courage and determination. So his heroes are people like Churchill and de Gaulle, Deng Xiaoping, he puts in a very high class, Lincoln.
And so far, how has our president impressed you?
Well, all the things that I've seen so far are quite impressive. I think that he shows himself to be to have a concept. The signals that he's given about the economic reform program that he's going to lead, if he actually is able to announce it next month and fulfill it, will be the biggest changes you've seen in the economy of China, certainly since maybe since Deng Xiaoping. I know that from the meeting this summer between President Obama and Xi Jinping, the American group was very impressed with him as a person who's serious about the next phase of reform in China.